Not sure you can see me. Good evening, everybody from South Africa. My name is Andrew Kerr, and welcome to the webinar on Australia this evening. Just a little bit of a quick introduction. I already mentioned my name. I'm a New Zealander. I lived in New Zealand for 20 years. And then I moved to Australia. I loved Australia, fell in love with Australia. Still do enjoy Australia. I lived there for 10 years. And then I came to South Africa in 1990. And in 1993, I had an opportunity to join Network Migration Services, so I did as a consultant back then. And then in 1996, I had an opportunity to buy the company, so I did. And I'm really pleased to say that in the last 30-odd years, we've immigrated, I keep losing the number, it's 15-odd thousand families, mostly out of Africa, but clearly now with technology, we do clients all over the world. We've got them as far away as UK, Ireland, China, Philippines, etc., Canada. So I'm a licensed immigration advisor for Australia and New Zealand. I'm not going to talk about New Zealand too much tonight because clearly we do separate webinars on New Zealand. We did the one last Wednesday. I don't remember when the next one is. It's in a couple of weeks' time. But I'm going to be specifically focusing on Australia. It's about 160 people booked in to listen to me tonight, so welcome to all of you. I'm sitting in my Joburg office. I don't live far from the office, so I just popped into the office because my internet is way better in here at the moment than at my house. And I want to welcome you all to the next sort of 25-odd, 30 minutes. We're not going to be too long tonight. I've had a very, very long day. I'm going to get to the point really quickly. I just wanted to say thank you very much to Ruan, our marketing manager, as always, for setting it up. Welcome to Desiree Lindeque. Desiree is our actually worldwide operations manager. She's also a provisionally licensed advisor for New Zealand and is allowed to give you immigration advice on Australia as well. Desiree runs our Auckland office and pretty much runs the company from Auckland. She's our operations manager. Welcome to Desiree. Thank you, as always, for getting up so early in the morning to be there and answer the questions. If you do have questions, please type them into the chat room. You can see them there, everybody. Good evening to everybody. Bongi and Saloshni and Dinesh and Funaway. I hope I'm pronouncing those names correct, but welcome to you all. The processes and procedures tonight, I'm going to give you a basic understanding of the skilled migration process, talk a little bit off the cuff about, procedures, timeframes, costs, etc., etc. If you do have a specific question, please put it into the chat room and Desiree will answer you. Also, I want to say hi to Xenia van Rooyen. Xenia is in our job search and job training division. She is a very exceptional employee and worker and colleague, and we're very proud to have Xenia on board for the last few months because she's really focused on helping our clients, of course, get that all on very important job offer. Notice on the very first slide, you'll see there I'm MARA registered. Please be careful. If you're going to get immigration advice, it is not going to come from somebody who knows what they're talking about if they're not MARA registered. MARA stands for it's actually OMARA, the Office of the Migration Agents Registration Association. Here's my registration number. I've been registered, 13 odd years with MARA, and you don't have to be registered. If you're an offshore agent, unless you've got offices in Australia, then you need to be registered. But clearly, for legitimate purposes and making sure, of course, we give the right advice, I am registered, not only for New Zealand, but also for Australia. For New Zealand, it's compulsory, whether you're offshore or onshore. But for Australia, it's not compulsory. And please just be very aware, especially in South Africa, there are just one or two agencies out there that you don't get the immigration advice from the licensed advisor. You get it from a non-licensed advisor, which is not against the rules, but 9 times out of 10, ladies and gentlemen, they just give the worst advice, and it's not accurate. And you just need to know, and I'll explain why in a minute. I'm a Kiwi. I'm a straight shooter. This is your life we're talking about here. You're not going and buying a new kettle or a new toaster, all right? This is your life. And if you're going to engage the services of an agency to do this, make sure you trust them. Make sure you've gone through what they will do for you, how they will do it, what it costs every stage of what they can do it, and understand the likelihood of you getting into Australia. Because just because you get on the selection mark doesn't mean you're going to get in, all right? And I'll talk about that when I go through the points, which will be in 5 minutes or so. I'm also a member of the Migration Institute of Australia. One of the major reasons for that is they're quite a an informative information body, because Department of Home Affairs Australia, with all due respect to my comment, you cannot contact them. They won't deal with you. They won't even respond to emails, which is not the same in New Zealand, but it is the way it is for Australia. And Mia is the sort of the go-to person, if you like, between agents and Department of Home Affairs in Australia, because that's, of course, who we'll be dealing with most of the time is the Department of Home Affairs. Thank you to our service providers. We are constantly building groups of our service providers. Some of them are on the front slide there. We are quite literally the one-stop shop. So I just want to go to the next slide. There's only a few slides to show you tonight. Network, as I've told you, has been around for over 30 years. We're going to go through the Australia visa and points soon. Relocation partners, you can just contact us to get that information, etc. And then por mezzo, the age limit is 45 under most visas, by the way. I'm sure Des will answer that in a minute. But point being, so where are we? A little bit about us. So we have 3 divisions within network migration. One division I basically oversee myself as a licensed advisor. I have file managers that work underneath me, and their job is to put together the applications with me and for me. So I can, of course, check documentation and make sure everything's hunky-dory, etc., etc. The file managers are excellent. I'm extremely proud to be associated with everyone that works at NMS. They are a fantastic group of people, and they care about this journey you're going to take, hopefully as much as you do. And as I said earlier, this is your life people are talking about here. So the file managers put together the applications for your skills assessments if required, of course, English test bookings we can do, etc. Normally you do that yourself because you can book online. Lodging the applications with the relevant authorities like Department of Home Affairs or the relevant states. Thank you, Des. In Australia, etc. So we put the applications together. If you need skills assessments, we'll do it. If you need, loading the applications, we'll do it. You need a state nomination, we'll do it. So there's not anything that we won't do. You just got to give us the information, and we'll be holding your hand through the entire process. So that's the visa division. We'll make sure the visas are granted, clearly. The other division is Rose's division. Rose works in the office behind me here. That's relocation assistance, flights, furniture, meeting at airports, accommodation, opening bank accounts, shifting money, pretty much everything to do with the physical, taking pets, that type of stuff. So all of those services are free to find out all that information for you and give you quotes for that. That's the second division. And then we've got our job search and job training division, which Xenia works in with Liz Verleuen. Liz is our HR manager. She's got an honours degree in HR, and she runs our recruitment company. So I noticed a few of you earlier saying, I need a job. I need a job. We are not predominantly a recruiter. We are predominantly migration agents or a migration firm. However, we do have our own job search division. So we do assist our clients with finding jobs in both Australia and New Zealand, especially New Zealand, because you need a job to get in, frankly. And in Australia, you might be looking for work, but it's a very, very different process getting into Australia on a work visa. The company has to be an approved sponsor. They've got to justify to immigration certain income requirements and financial requirements, etc. So it's a lot harder to get into Australia on a work visa than it is to New Zealand. By the way, if you want to be assessed for New Zealand, I will assess you for New Zealand. You just got to let me know when you send me your CVs. Ruan did put up earlier a link that you can log on to attach your CVs, etc., etc. But I also put in my email address. All our emails are our first names at networkmigration.com. So Desiree at networkmigration.com, Andrew at networkmigration.com, etc., etc. So point being, I'm basically tonight, I'm going to be going through the specific visa types, mainly in skilled migrant visa. But as you can see from the slides I'm just going through, there's not a visa that we don't do. I mean, skilled migrant, I'm going to concentrate on tonight. Student visas, of course, we do. Family reunification visas, business visas, investor visas, work visas. Have I got another slide there? No. Work visas, etc. So there's really not a holiday visa. There's not a visa we can't handle for you. All right? Now, out of those 3 divisions, if you engage our services in the first week, first 3 to 5 days, you'll be allocated a file manager to work with you in the entire process, and you will then receive what we call a starter pack, which is quite simply a documentation checklist. We then collect the relevant documentation at each stage of the qualification, of the application process. And once we've got the documentation, we of course check it, verify it, put it together, and submit it to the relevant stages of the process. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not going to talk about family, business, or work too much tonight, or student. If you want to find out about those visas, just drop me an email, andrew@networkmigration.com. I'm going to talk about skilled migrant today. It was announced today, or yesterday in Australia, but it came out today, that Australia is looking for, I'll just read something to you. They're going to be in this, the net migration programs commencing in July, from July 2024 to June, end of June 2025. And the reason for that is that's Australia's tax year. So that's when they reboot all their immigration processes. So if you want to be in to win, then get in the system as soon as possible. But they're allocating 185,000 places for migrants this year. However, 132,000 of those places will be in the skill stream, and approximately 71% of the program. The stream has been designed to improve the productivity capacity of the economy and will fill skill shortages in the labour market, particularly in regional areas. Regional areas being cities and states outside of, Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, which are probably the three biggest, well, they are the three biggest cities in Australia. They're wanting you to go more regional, like Perth, or go to Queensland by all means, but don't go to Brisbane. Go to New South Wales by all means, but don't go to Sydney. So you actually get bonus points for going into other states, which I'll show, or other areas, which I'll show you in a minute. Family stream, so 132,200 places for skilled migrant, but a lot of it will be concentrating on state nominations, and the states will be allocated throughout July. The federal government, DHA, allocates the states certain amounts that they can actually get approved. And when the states fill up those applications or those slots, they'll close. All right. And then they won't reopen again. Etc. I could read the whole thing to you, but I don't want to bore you. I can certainly bore you when you come on to a private consultation. Yeah, Marcel, that's an interesting question. I'm sure Des will answer that, but I'll come to that. Right. So let me just go to the next slide. Now, you qualify, let's just pretend, you qualify to lodge an application for Australia underneath the SMC, skilled migrant category. Okay? I'm not going to go through everything in detail here. Take a screenshot. Okay? And there's another slide I want you to take a screenshot as well. But I'm just going to talk about some pertinent points here. First of all, your age. You'll notice your age for a skilled migrant category cutoff for Australia is 45 years old. It's quite young. New Zealand's cutoff is 56. But your cutoff to lodge a points-tested skilled migrant category for Australia is 45. And what happens with that is you'd need to be selected from the Department of Home Affairs, from the Skills Select site. I'll explain in a minute. Pay the processing fees to the Australian Department of Home Affairs. And once you've paid those fees, your age will freeze. So if you have a critical birthday coming up, and you can see here you're going to lose points the older you get, then get on with it, because you need to be selected, submit, and pay before your 45th birthday. Once you've paid them, it still might take 3 to 6 months to get your visa granted, but once you've paid them, your age will freeze. Okay? Point for qualifications up on the top right there. Doctorate, bachelor's, diploma, or trade. There are over 30 Australian assessing authorities. If you are going to go in to Australia as a skilled migrant, in 95% of cases, 98% of cases, you will need a qualification. And by qualification, I mean a minimum, most cases, 3-year diploma or trade or a degree or an honours or a master's or a PhD. Okay? There are only 2 of the over 30 assessing authorities in Australia that will assess you based on your work experience. One is called IML, the Institute of Management and Leadership, and that is to assess very, very senior positions, corporate positions, where you've got staff under you, managers under you, you're reporting directly to the CEO normally, etc., etc. You don't necessarily need to have a qualification for that, but you'd need a minimum of 5 years work experience in that field, minimum. And by the way, by not having the qualification means you don't get the points. They might assess you positively, but you can't claim the points because you don't have the relevant qualification, which could hurt your application. And the other assessing authority that doesn't necessarily require you to have a degree or a formal qualification is the Australian Computer Society. They will assess you based on your work experience of 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, and further. And again, you cannot claim the qualification points. You might get a positive assessment from ACS, but you can't claim the qualification points. Okay? Please do remember that if you're doing a job which requires you to register psychologists, electricians, plumbers, teachers, etc., etc., you will need to register with the relevant body as part of the migration process and as part of the skills assessment process as well. So when you send me your CVs, I will send you back in the first document what I call a pathway to residency, which is outlined step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. What does step 1, 2, 3, 4 cost? What are the charges involved with the relevant authorities? That will be in the first document I send you. Okay. The second document will be our services, our quote for you engaging us and taking you all the way through to finalise your visas for Australia. That'll be the second document. Now, our quote is over and above the costs in the first document, so you've got to add them together. And then the third document I send you is an assessment form. It's if you want to get the ball rolling, you'd fill in the assessment form, pick a payment plan that suited you, and send us back. We'd then send you the agreement with the agreed fees, etc. And then you'd sign that, send it back, you'd pay us a deposit, and then we get cracking. Okay, just coming back to the slide, English. You'll notice your points for English: competent, proficient, and superior. Now, you might be sitting in Ireland at the moment, or America, or Canada, or England, and say, hey, I'm exempt from the English test. You're quite right, you are, as long as you hold a passport from those countries. But you don't get the points, which means you probably still need to sit the test, because you've got to get as many points as possible. Minimum points required, 65. That's quite correct. But that doesn't mean you're going to be selected on 65. Let me give you an example. Accountants have not been selected on anything less than 80 points to get into Australia since 2016. That's 9 years. Accountant has not been selected on less than 80, 85 points. Software engineers, same thing. Okay? So Australia caps it. In the old days, when I say old days, I've been doing this for 30 years. In the old days, you got 60 points, you're in. Okay? Fast, bar, etc. But things are getting tougher. The world's getting smaller. And people and clearly countries like Australia and New Zealand are looking for specific skills. So they're going to make it harder for you to get in by lifting the actual selection mark. Because what happens is once you've done your English test, you've had your qualifications assessed, and you've assessed you've got all the documents in order, ready to load the application into the Skills Select website. You'll be claiming work experience points, which is quite obvious there. It's 3 out of 5, 5 out of 8, and 8 out of 10 years. But clearly the work experience must be related to your qualification. And 9 times out of 10, it needs to be post-qualification as well. Okay? Sometimes you can count pre-qualification work experience. And as you send us your CVs, etc., we'll let you know that in the email. All right? But most of the time you can't. So you've got your qualifications assessed, and you've sat your English test. Sometimes that's the other way around. For example, accountants and teachers and engineers need to sit their English test up front. The assessing authorities of those 3 occupations won't accept your application without your English test results. There are four basic tests you can sit. Be careful, because some of the assessing authorities one or two of them won't take some of the tests. So you just need to be careful what you sit, what test you sit. I'll tell you what one to sit clearly when I send you an email. All right. You'll also get points for, remember, if you've got a qualification and you're in a relationship of, you've lived with your partner for 12 months or more, you don't have to marry them, but if you've lived with them for 12 months or more, you're called a common law partner anyway. Then if your partner's qualifications, well, first of all, your partner can sit the English test, and as you can see, as long as they get a moderate understanding or competent, they'll be able to give you 5 points on your application. But if their occupation and qualifications are on the same skills list as you, then you can claim another 5 points. But clearly, you would need those qualifications assessed as well. Now, there are two main skills lists for Australia. One is called the medium, long, and long-term strategic skills shortage list. Okay? That is basically, it's called a subclass 189. And a 189, I call it the blue chip visa. When it's granted, you can live where you want and do what you want. When you get a 189, you've got 5 years to take it up. If you're not going to take it up in the first year, you must validate it in the first year. And that means that everybody that was on that application must enter Australia and get their passports validated. And then you can come back to your home country, and then you've got 4 years and whatever's left of the first year to go back again. Okay? That's on a 189. The other list is called the StSOL. It stands for the State and Territory Skilled Occupations List. And this slide shows it up better. 491s and 190s. By the way, if you're single, in other words, you don't have a partner, you can have children, but if you don't have a partner, you can actually claim 10 bonus points. God knows why. That came out in the last few years for Australia. I don't know why they value single people and give you more points than if you're in a relationship, but they do. If you studied in Australia, you can clearly get points. You can see that on the top left. But when I send you the processes, if you qualify for a 189, 190, and 491, I'm going to tell you, because you might not get selected on the 189 at 65 or 70 or 75 points. You might need the extra points. You might need the extra points that the states will give you, or your family will give you, or a regional sponsored application would give you. Now, those points are an extra 5 if it's a 190 visa. A 190 is state nominated, where it is still residency. You still get the 5-year window. And you sign a declaration that says, we're happy to live and work in the state for a period of 2 years. Okay? You get 5 bonus points for that. You get 15 bonus points if you do a 491 application sponsored by an eligible state or an eligible Australian citizen. I wouldn't use my family to sponsor me in Australia, by the way. If they live in Sydney, Brisbane, or Melbourne, they can't sponsor you anyway. But if they live in a regional or rural area, they can. But those visas allocations are quite small, so the process takes longer. If you can get in without using family, you don't use the family. It'll be faster. Okay? So if you're sponsored by a state, territory, or family member, you get 15 points, 15 bonus points. It's called a subclass 491. Came out in November 2019, just before COVID hit. And bottom line with that visa, it's issued for 5 years. You still get free schooling and healthcare. However, you've got a year to take it up. And then for the following 3 years, you must earn, it's either $70,000 or $71,000 a year. I always forget. Let's say $71,000 a year, which shouldn't be hard. That's quite easy to earn in Australia. But for those 3 years, you cannot live or work in Sydney, Brisbane, or Melbourne. Live anywhere else in the country except those 3 cities. So in other words, you could live in Queensland, but just not in Brisbane, and work. Okay, you cannot live or work in those 3 cities. So keep in mind that. Okay, so that is points test. Now, we've already talked about relocation. So I'm actually nearly finished, guys. So if you've got any questions, please type them quickly into the chat room. And by the way, all our consults, all our information, everything we do for you up front is free. We don't charge for it. There's no consultation fees. There's no information charges for the information we give you. I had a client today. He's a business client, lovely, lovely couple. In fact, I know them. Our sons went to school together. He's in Saudi at the moment working corporate level. The spouse is down here with son and daughter. Anyway, so they actually qualify for multiple pathways. They qualify for a pathway on a 189, they qualify for a 190, a 491, and a business visa, and he can potentially get a job offer in Australia. So I've sent them all of it. Didn't cost them a cent. I've sent them everything. They've got 4 or 5 ways to get into Australia, so now they can make an informed decision. I'll be doing exactly the same with you, although most of you won't have 4 or 5 ways. You might have 1 or 2 ways, but you won't have 4 or 5 ways. Okay. So, timing. Australia, if you are a teacher or a healthcare worker, you're virtually processed straight away. You've got to have your skills assessed. You've got to do your English test. And then teachers and healthcare workers, in fact, let me explain how Australia works. Prior to COVID, Australia used to select every 14 days, same as New Zealand. Then COVID hit, they went to selecting once a month, and then they went to selecting once every quarter, every 3 months. Since lockdowns stopped, which was pretty much through 2021 for most countries, and New Zealand, well, I think was the last, it was August, Australia has not selected anyone other than teachers and healthcare workers. The last main selection from the main lists was in the end of January. They weren't even supposed to select at the end of January, but they did. We should, in the next week or so, see if they selected anybody at the end of April, because if they're going to stick to what they said they were going to stick to, that would be 12 weeks, but they don't publish it for about 2 weeks, which is pretty much now. All right. I could be wrong on that, Des, but you could probably tell me that. I'm sure we can talk about that in the morning. But the processes get rebooted. I've already said this in the 1st of July because that's a tax year. So I've got and you can already see, I mean, Australia announced today, they've rebooted, they're looking for 185,000 people, blah, 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 blah. But what you've got to be careful of here is you need to be ready. I'll give you an example. A couple of years, a year prior to COVID, Queensland opened their selection criteria for the 190 at 8 o'clock in the morning one morning. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they closed it. They had thousands of applications within that 8-hour period. So you need to be ready, as we would be clearly as your agent, if you're doing a state nomination, to know when the state is allocated, and you want to be sending your application straight away in those first 24, 48, 72 hours. You want to be sending the application because you want to be in the beginning of the queue. Because the moment that you load the application into the Skills Select site, remember, you've done your English test, you've done your skills assessment, we load the applications. We can actually load multiple. We can load the 189 if you qualify. We can load the 190 and the 491. We can load all 3. Because when we load them, it doesn't cost anything, bar our time, of course, which you've paid for. So we can load all 3, and then your file manager and myself will be monitoring the states. And as your occupation, qualifications, occupation, etc., pops up on the states, bang, we can lodge within 24, 48. We would ask you, right, you've popped up on South Australia. Would you like us to submit? Some of the states you can't select. New South Wales, for example, you can't select. You've got to load your application, and if they want you, they'll select you. And we're noticing a few of the other states are going that way as well. So bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, you need to be in it to win it, okay? So guys, as I said, all the information I'm going to give you is absolutely zero cost to you. Once I've sent you the information, if you want to have a consult, you are very welcome to consult face-to-face in my Johannesburg offices. If you are in Joburg or Pretoria at the moment, we are at Bid-Offs in Pretoria this weekend at 9 o'clock in the morning. We are doing, somebody wants to come on stage. I wouldn't imagine that was the case. I think you've pushed the wrong button. Anyway, we are doing a face-to-face seminar. We are doing a face-to-face seminar. We've got 300 people booked. We won't get 300 people. We get about 100, 150 at Bid-Offs in Pretoria. If you want those details, just drop us an email. Email me or email Ruan at networkmigration.com. He'll send you the links and the booking details. It's free. Starts at 9 a.m. on Saturday and finish about 11. And then clearly, if you want to come and see me either in the offices, you can do that. As I've said, it's free. Or we can do virtual meetings, Teams, Skype, Google Meet, Zoom. we use it all, ladies and gentlemen. So what I would strongly suggest, if you're shopping around, continue. But make sure that when you are speaking to the agent, one, make sure they're licensed, and two, make sure you understand what you're paying for. What services are you getting for the money you pay? For example, a lot of companies out there don't do your skills assessments for you. They'll send you the link and say, go do it yourself. And then, when it comes back, you've done it all. What are you paying them for? So we do the skills assessments clearly for you. We can't set the English test for you. You've got to do that. But we do the skills assessments for you. We register you if you need registration. You might have to jump through a couple of hoops for the registration, depending on what occupation it is, but we will guide you through those areas. And of course, once your visas are granted, we can hand you over to the job search division. But I've never had anyone in 33 years be granted a visa in Australia, land and not find work. You've got to remember, you're going to countries that unemployment is around 4%. And frankly, there's always 3% of your population that doesn't want to work anyway because they want to go on the dole. Stephen, there's no such thing, mate. You mean a critical skills visa? All right. You're just using the wrong terminology, possibly, Stephen. I'd need you just drop me an email with your CVs. Excuse me, Stefan. My apologies, Stefan. There we are. There's all English. Des is, logging all that in for you guys. But as I said, guys, I mean, it's been half an hour. I'm going to log off now. Please just liaise with me. Drop me an email, andrew@networkmigration.com or desiree@networkmigration.com. If you want to be assessed. Assessments are free. And clearly, if you're a business owner or an investor, or you've got an Australian partner, or you want to do a student visa, or you're a parent, you want to go to Australia, whatever, I have all of that information for you. I just didn't touch on it tonight because we only had basically half an hour. So I wanted to say thank you to everybody. Thank you, Des, as always, for joining. Thank you, Des, for answering the questions. Thanks, Xenia, for joining. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you, Ryan, for arranging everything again, as always. And guys, if you decide to take this journey with us, please be assured of our full support. And if you don't, even after you've consulted with us, I would wish you all the very, very best anyway. So stay safe, everybody. We'll chat soon. Ciao.